Hi, everybody. This is Deb Brown from Savior.town, and today I have the distinct pleasure to be speaking with Chris Casillas from Regenerating Sonora. The first obvious question is, what is that? What is Regenerating Sonora?
That is a great question, by the way, Deb. It's nice to be here with you. I love seeing your smiling face.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Regenerating Sonora is a nonprofit. We're based out of Superior, Arizona, population 3,000. And our focus is in advancing the development and exchange of diverse forms of capital in the Sonoran Desert. So there's a lot that's packed there that we can get into. But ultimately, the idea is we see capital not just being financial capital, kind of like when you have a monoculture or a monocrop, that's bad for the environment. We know that. It's the same thing with capital. If we are only looking at financial capital, there's a lot of challenges with that. So we're bringing in this other paradigm around how we can start to develop other forms of capital, including financial capital, in a way that's based on living systems thinking.
That's awesome. That's a lot of words too. So we're going to break it. Yeah, we're going to break it down a little bit. We talked about being involved with the Regenesis folks, and that speaks to how you got involved in leaving the tech world and coming home. So let's start with your story first. Give me a little background on who you are and what you've done and why you're doing this.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm originally from this town. My family goes 4 generations back. So I'm a 5th generation community member here in this town. And I grew up here, and before junior high school, moved away. And it's been about 20-some years since now coming back home. And so in between that time, I worked in the tech world, like you alluded to, started as an early employee at a startup company and did the whole journey of going from just being a few guys in a room to fast forward, it's a $1 billion publicly traded company, and I'm the director of business development, and things are going pretty good. And at the same time, I just got in touch with almost like a voice that said, like, maybe you could be contributing in a more meaningful way. And sometimes when you have a question like that, the question has you more than you have the question. And so it took about a year of planning and preparation to finally leave my job and to pursue whatever this voice was asking me to pursue. It was help people in some way. And so, yeah, I ended up leaving my job. About a month later, there was a school shooting that happened in the state of Texas where I was living at the time. And yeah, it really affected me. And I just had more questions than anything. Questions like, is this going to be the future for my kids when I have kids one day? Questions like, what's the root cause of this? Why is this happening? And so I just started to pursue that. And that took me to a lot of different places and speaking with a lot of different folks. I would read the literature that I could find on it. If there was someone who had a presentation, like a TED Talk or something talking about this issue, I'd find them on the internet. I'd talk to them. If I read a book that was talking about this, I'd talk to the author and build relationships that way and just ask deeper questions. And it seemed like really it was kind of a canary in the coal mine for some societal breakdown that was taking place on a larger systemic level. And as I kept on asking that question, I started to see, going way back to even like the founding of our country and before that, of patterns of dysfunction around going to a place or community and imposing upon it certain things that pull it away from the kind of cohesion that cultures had in the past. And I'm personally really blessed to have grown up in Superior, a town that's really close. We have a lot of social capital here. And I lived with my grandparents till I was 13 years old, and I had a bunch of aunties and uncles and honorary aunties and uncles, allo parents as they're called, who helped me in all kinds of different ways and just showered me with love. And I can look back and I'm just so grateful for the fact that I had that opportunity and the privilege to grow up that way, and realizing that other kids don't have that same kind of upbringing. They're not all blessed in that way. And why is that? And so those are some of the questions I started to ask. And that led me to understanding more about living systems development, and seeing that on the community level, especially a small town like Superior, it's an ideal container for which we can work to start to revitalize the place and not just solve the problems that are going on, but truly realize and actualize the inherent potential of the place and of the people. And so even someone like doing something as awful as a mass shooting, let's say, like my view is that that same person who would do something like that actually has the potential to be a mass blessing. And what do we need to do in order to see that we're bringing out the gifts, the beauty, and the intelligence of our young people, and not just our young people, but all life itself within a particular container, in this case, a community, a small town, something like that.
You talk about 7 generations, which is it's a whole theory about what you do today affects 7 generations going both ways. That's, I think, the value in helping our youth. It's not just helping our youth, but it's helping our elders as well, all along the process. So I think that's pretty important. That's a native thing, isn't it? Can you
Yeah.
just share about that just a little bit on what that is for our listeners that don't know?
Yeah, so 7 generation thinking, this is something that a lot of different tribes and indigenous people have a connection with. And just like you said, it's this idea of being able to look out and say, I don't know if I lost you there. I just got a
It's
phone call.
okay. We're back. Yep. It's okay.
Nice. Yeah. And looking out and saying, what can we do now that's going to be in service in the long term to life in the future? And again, it's not just like the kids or the young people in 7 generations, but like all life itself, and that means the birds, the hummingbirds, someone really wants to call me. So the butterflies, the soil, the whole bit.
Just keep talking. You'll come in and out. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we forget life is more than just human. And if you're the kind of thinker I think you are, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and we have this most amazing topsoil and rich, deep, fertile ground. And taking care of that ground and looking at how it was done before and where we are now, the shift in the 50 years since I've been on a farm has been huge on the way people are taking care of the ground. It's no different with learning how to take care of each other in a community. It's a little different, but it's the same concept for sure.
Life has needs. We're all interdependently connected, and so those are universal principles across the board. And looking a little bit closer into some of the issues I was looking at, I started to see right relationship really being at the core of this thing, being in right relationship. And what does that mean? And what are the conditions that are conducive to bringing that about in a community or anywhere else?
So I know that you and I could talk for hours and hours about these wonderful topics, but I also know that the people listening to this want to hear about some of the things you've done in your community. How have you taken these things from your head and your heart and put them into action in your community? And while I'm at it, I just want to give a shout out to Mila B., your mayor, who is one of Savior.Town's favorite people. So again, explain to us what some of the things that you and your folks have done in your community.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I'll start by framing just the way in which we're going about our work, because sometimes the impulse for folks who want to help is like they have these great ideas and they want to impose them onto a place, and in a way that's almost like repeating some of the patterns that got us in this mess in the first place. Imposing an idea upon a place has all kinds of ripple effects that even if your intentions are really good, it may not truly be helping. And so I mentioned before about Regenesis, the Regenesis group. They're an outfit out of Santa Fe, and they're focused on living systems development, this idea of regenerative development and design. And what is that? It's looking at living systems and engaging in a way that helps their capability to evolve, increases their vitality and their viability, their ability to have exchange amongst other systems. And so with that in mind, a key pillar here is to, before actually helping, going to a place and listening to the place, seeing the place as a whole. And when I say that, I mean like the ecological systems, the hydrology systems, the all the different living systems that are associated with this place. That includes the people too, of course. The history of the place, pre-contact history, contemporary history, and then what's going on today. And what we're looking for here is patterns that almost like a golden thread that goes throughout all these systems, that we can start to say, oh, okay, this is what this place is about. This is what the essence of this place is about. Just like with a person, let's say if you have a kid and you really want them to be a doctor and they're like, 3 years old, and you're just like, you're going to be a doctor. Like, that's not the way to truly develop what's special and unique about that particular person. And it's the same thing with a place. The place has an essence. It has a way in which it expresses itself. By understanding what that is, we can then say that the work that we're going to be doing is in service to that, is amplifying that. And so that's really where we started, is doing that work. And that means like interviewing archaeologists, geologists, talking with people who, like someone like my grandfather who's 94 years old, and asking about stories about the past. And we're starting to uncover these patterns. Once we start to have a sense of what that is, we now have a basis for how we're going to do our work. And that's just completely changes the relationship that we have to the place and the relationship to our own work. And so with that in mind, we started to ask the question, like, what's the role that we want to be playing here? And within Regenerating Sonora, we see that our role uniquely that we bring to the table is helping with education, is helping to foster collaboration, and helping to foster inspiration. So we just ask the question, like, okay, well, what's the kind of role that does that? And one idea might be a coach. Like, a coach is someone that does those things, that fosters collaboration, education, and inspiration. And so then we say, how might our role that we take on be, is like almost like coaching the community as a whole. We want to see a community that's more resilient, that is more creative, that's more connected and engaged. And we know that those things are directly associated with the place itself. And I could get into what that all means in terms of our place, but I'm just trying to paint the concept of the basis for the work. I can share a link with you that shows the story of place in greater detail if anyone's curious to know some of the patterns
That would
we
be
picked
great.
up from
Yeah,
this.
you can email it to me and I'll include it in the YouTube link. So
one of the things that we uncovered there is that the place has always enabled diverse exchange. And this goes back to before there were even humans in this place, to all the way to now. So enabling diverse exchange is a big part of what this place has done. And we started to work with that pattern and say, what might we be able to do that is honoring that aspect of how this place is. And that plus responding to COVID-19, one of the things that we did is created a community network. It's like a community action network or community aid network. And this is a group of us who started getting together organically at first, asking what are the needs for the community. And based on that, we started to put some projects together around how we can help. So one example is we've done a feeding program, especially when school was out and there was that big lull in summertime, where kids didn't have meals here in our town provided by the school. And that's something that parents count on. We're a Title I school. In our case, we have based on the economic situation here, every kid is given a free lunch from the school. And so when all of a sudden parents don't have that because school's out, then what do? And then what about the weekends? This is the real need. So we organized together, and within this concept of diverse exchange, we're all getting together, we're sharing ideas back and forth, and then we started this project of doing a feeding program that's still going today. And we started it at the end of April, right when things were starting to heat up with COVID in our place. And since then, we've provided over 8,000 meals for our young people, and we've continued to do that. And part of that idea of taking a role of a coach is like, how can we facilitate in a way that grows the ableness of all the people that are helping? So if we're doing a retrospective and asking how did we do on our last time that we provided meals, instead of me being up there with all the answers, what might it be like if throughout the process we were actually teaching other people how to do these things, how to facilitate conversations? And so that can happen where even, in one case we have a young high school student who can lead these things better than I can at this point. And so this is part of the way in which we're engaging in the work through that role that I mentioned before.
So it's very idea friendly, which means that you are creating enough small steps to engage as many people as possible. So everyone that can be involved. And it also sounds like you're listening to people's ideas. You're taking everything in and allowing people to go test and try. And okay, great, that sounds great. Go do that. Okay, great. What do you need for that? And all of that is idea friendly. Which I'll share with you via email if you haven't already heard about it. It's what we do at Savior.town.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, to talk like you did, like you reached out to folks online and said, I like what you're saying. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Everybody should do that. It's easy enough to do, and surprising how many people do want to talk to each other. So let's talk about developing local capital. Now, you said that its capital is not always financial. It's not always money. Talk about some other forms of capital and give folks an idea of maybe something they could do in their own community to develop some local capital.
That is a really, really good one. And an easy exercise to do is start by just listing out some of these other forms of capitals. Here's just some examples. It's not like there's like a predefined list of what they are, but as I mentioned some of these, you might start to think of some other forms of capital as well. So of course you got financial capital. There's natural capital. And so you can think about that, like if you have any plans to do any community gardens in your area, if you have some remediation that needs to be done, like we do because we're a mining town, so there's plenty there that we can be looking at. So natural capital is one. Another one is social capital, how people are connecting and how you might be building that. Human capital, of course, human development. Produced capital, your buildings, maybe you have some buildings that you want to do something else with, and produced capital can be just, there's so many different places you could take that one. And of course, cultural capital. Each place has cultural capital that really would like to be developed. And there's all kinds of ways that you can put your creativity to that. So if you could create that list of, that example of 6 forms of capital that I just gave, you can just start to map out all the different things that you're already doing that, apply in those areas. And by looking at it in this way, it might just lift up some other areas in your town that maybe you're neglecting because you just haven't thought about it in this way. And you can start to map out other items that come up to your attention to say, okay, how might we do this? And of course, you can find that projects that you're doing or projects that you could do can always touch more than one form of capital. Give you an example. Right now, we're planning a community garden project. And in doing that, what we're looking at is not only the natural capital development, which is happening there, but also the human capital that can be developed by being educational, and the social capital that can happen by collaborations that come together. So you don't necessarily have to think of any project that you do and only being one form of capital. Ideally, we're generating multiple forms of capital in any project that we're doing. And this just gives you a framework to think about it that way.
And don't forget the entrepreneurial capital in that one project, because someone may very well come out of that and say, I like doing this. I'm going to go organic and help support my local residents or sell to the restaurants. I mean, the ideas are just out there for sure.
Right.
And you may not have thought about that if you hadn't had that discussion. So that's the validity of that. In this time of COVID, how are you getting together with people? Is it mostly online like what we're doing? Or tell me how you're working with, because it's hard. We don't want to be sick.
Yeah, it is hard. So we do conference calls. That's been helpful. And I'll tell you a little experiment that we're very new in the process, but we're playing around with the idea, because we're in a small town, we're playing around with the idea of using some walkie-talkies. And if you look at some of the emergency preparedness checklists that are out there, they usually have two-way radios as being something that households should have anyway. And so we're not sure if this idea is going to work just yet, but it's, we're just playing with some of these other ways that we can be connected to each other.
That is so awesome. Yeah, you're going to test it out. You're going to try it. If it fails, so what? It's a small step. You can either adjust and figure out how to make it work, or you can say, that doesn't work for what we're doing. So I love that. You have to keep me looped in how that form of conversation is working. I could see you're doing community gardens as one project. it's hard I hate meetings. I hate meetings. To get 6 people together or 9 people, whatever that particular board has, and you just talk about stuff you're going to do instead of doing stuff. So for me, it's important to be out in the field and doing things. And it's hard during COVID. So this whole walkie-talkie idea is a brilliant. I love it. So you could all be in the same space and far enough apart and be safe. So thank you for sharing that. Where can we find you? Where can we find you online for people that want more information?
The best place is regeneratingsonora.org. You can find us there. That's really the best place. And then we have links to social media from there that you can get to. And I just want to squeeze a couple other things in here that have just been really helpful for us. So one is Sociocracy. This is a governance system that we use. And I thought about it when you said about hating meetings. I really dislike dysfunctional meetings. You know, those are the kind that, like, I want to pull my really long hair out, you know. But yeah, the Sociocracy as a governance system has totally changed the game for us. And I would just recommend that folks look into it. And if anyone wants to ask some questions about that, you feel free to reach out to me. My email address is chris@regeneratingsonora.org. And Diana Leaf Christensen is the Sociocracy trainer that we use. She also has a book called Creating a Life Together, which I highly recommend if you're interested in doing some community development stuff. So that's been a nice gem for us.
What is her last name? Diana?
Leaf Christensen. I'm just looking around to see if I have the book.
That's all right. I'll figure it out and put it in the description for you too.
She's fantastic, and she's actually, because of COVID, she's now doing online training. So we had her come here to Superior to help us with this. But yeah, her online trainings I would highly recommend. And the other one is talking circles. This has been a way for us to hold space in a way that everyone is heard, and that it's safe for everyone to really engage and bring their whole selves to. And this is a process that we learned from an organization called the Four Worlds Institute. And so you can take a look at what they're up to. And the pattern is pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, a person has a talking piece or a talking stick, and they say their piece. If you're time constrained, you limit folks to whatever time per share, 2 minutes or what have you. And everyone listens actively to that person who has the stick. And then when they're finished talking, they pass it to the next person. And there's no pressure for someone to speak or not. They can just say pass, and it goes to the next person. And this just, it brings about a kind of collective intelligence that has just been so powerful and beautiful. I'd highly recommend looking into some of these formats that can be useful when engaging in groups.
It's important, I think, instead of a classroom setting where somebody's lecturing in front and the chairs are lined up, there's no interaction amongst people that way. So changing it to a circle conversation where you actually get to see and hear what other people are saying, that's powerful. That's a transference of energy that makes everybody stronger, for sure. We could go forever, but neither one of us have forever. One last thing. What is one last thing you'd like to share with me?
I would say that, you know, instead of looking at problems that we want to solve, you know, what if we were start to look at potential that can be realized and actualized? This is such a shift in the way that we're relating to the world around us, and it really opens up a lot of possibilities. And so that's been something that's been really helpful to me, and I hope it's helpful to other people as well.
So awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for your time today. Again, Chris Casillas with regeneratingsonora.org. There's lots of information there, and look for details in the bottom of the YouTube description too. Again, Chris, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. This was great.